My name is Jonathan Betts. I'm Sales and Marketing Director for Science Warehouse, and the subject for the session today is the title we got there, Purchasing Pentathlon, 5 Steps to Taking the P2P Podium. So you can see what was on the front of my mind when we put this submission into the organisers, very much in the middle of the Olympic season. Hopefully there's still some relevance for that today. But the key point is to look at some of the key criteria that we've found in working with our customers, and some of them are in the room today, and it's great to see them. The key factors we've identified that contribute to a good procure-to-pay project and deliverables. And although Science Warehouse is obviously a software as a service provider, it's not really about the software. It's all about the people and your structures, and I think that's one of the key messages that I'd like you to take away today, and you can probably tell me some stuff to feed into there as well. So first of all, just introduce Science Warehouse, quick hello, just to establish why we're saying what we're saying. A quick summary in terms of where we feel the procure-to-pay market, as it were, is today, and where organisations are in their life cycles with that. The third question is P2P, why bother? Now, you may say, why am I standing here talking about P2P and saying, well, why bother? Well, I think it's one of those questions which we continuously need to re-examine and say, are we doing the right things here, and is this actually delivering what we needed to deliver for our organisations? And then the 5 points will come out of 5 questions, really, which I want to pose that as you're planning or going through your projects, the types of things that need to be looked at to get those deliverables out of your P2P project. And then question answers. I think it was said in the sessions before, we've got a stand up by the stairs upstairs. So if you have got any questions, if we run out of time here, then please do come along and see us over there. So Science Warehouse, we've been around for well over 10 years now, and what we do is help organisations to deliver savings, compliance, and spend visibility. Ultimately, our customers are across the public and private sectors, and we help them by providing what we call web-based P2P spend analysis and catalogue solutions. So, I know everyone talks about cloud and whatever these days. We do actually provide a cloud solution, but we don't really use that terminology. We've always been doing that, and as far as I know, we probably always will. Who knows? Something else might come along to kick that out of the way at some time in the future. As a business, we're doing well thanks to our customers. So we're one of the top 10 fastest growing companies in the UK e-business sector, according to Plimsoll. So just to set the ground for the framework for the discussion today, what we mean when we're talking about P2P. And it's really, I really just want to focus on that transactional process rather than the sort of broader realm. Otherwise we could be literally here all day. So for us, it's very much starting at the top there with a cycle of a user in your organisation identifying a business need. They have a requirement for a certain product or service. They then need to fulfill that either by going to the existing contracts or whatever it may be, whatever the structure is within the organisation. So they're in fact searching in the catalogues, finding the products they require, submitting a request for a purchase, which is then received and obviously fulfilled by the suppliers. That's then receipted, the invoice and payment process, and the products are consumed before we start the whole process over again. Now, you might say from a procurement point of view, that's missing out a large chunk around contract management, contract lifecycle management, and all the rest of it, but it certainly is. But from the point of view of today, we're purely looking at that very focused P2P element. So where are we in terms of the market today? So I've pulled out a couple of bits of information. It's not that easy to come by, but there's a few analyses out there. This one is from Accenture from last year, and what they've done with this is to look at various stages in the P2P process. From the top is actually mapping the requisition to pay, as they call it, actually mapping that process, and then going through to the bottom where you've got a fully integrated P2P platform. And what they split, they call theirs masters and contenders, which sounds a bit like a movie, but basically they're sort of market leaders as the blue bars, and the I suppose what's often called the laggards in the greyish or beige ones. And effectively what that's saying is that in the early stages of the process, then certainly the advanced, the more mature businesses are well progressed, whereas the remainder of the market is some way behind. So certainly when it comes down to the level of full integration and connectivity with suppliers and internal systems, there's still some way to go. Looking from a slightly different angle, this is a study from PwC. So this isn't looking at P2P per se, but it really just a reflection of the use of e-systems within the procurement landscape. So on the upwards axis, it's actually looking at e-government usage, and the bottom is e-procurement usage. When they're talking about e-procurement usage, it's actually companies submitting e-tenders into public bodies. Each bubble is a country. It's probably a little bit faint on there, but what they're saying is on average 13% of businesses are using e-procurement in this way, so it's a very small percentage. Now, given that probably 6 years or so ago there was a target of 50% uptake by 2010, which was clearly massively missed, it's some way behind. I think it's all shifted out to 2016 now, hasn't it? But even that may seem a little ambitious. And then finally, some work survey that Science Warehouse did at the start of 2012, which was there's about 300 or so companies involved and organisations involved in this survey. And we actually asked them, where are they in terms of their P2P? Have they implemented a solution? As you can see from the graph there, the ones over the left have got a P2P solution in place. The largest bar on the left, just over 25%, is finance or ERP-based solutions, and around 15% are using a dedicated P2P solution, so something like a Science Warehouse or a Proactus or that type of solution. And then the remainder, which actually accounts for 57%, haven't got a P2P solution in place, which you might say is somewhat surprising. Although about 20% of those outstanding are planning or were planning to implement in the next 12 months. So there is still a large chunk of organisations which don't appear to be doing anything in P2P for whatever reason. So that brings me on to my question of, well, P2P, why bother? Now, I know this, in the plenary session this morning, it was talking about, well, procurement needs to move from cost reduction onto SRM and more strategic aspects. Very true as a whole, but I think in reality, when you go out and ask businesses, and this is the same survey, what their priorities are, then, as we can see in there, over 80%, their number one priority is cost reduction. And that's, it's clearly the first thing that procurement has to deliver is cost control and compliance before you even get onto all this more strategic stuff. So from that, the tools such as P2P are very relevant for delivering savings and delivering that cost reduction and ensuring that it's sustainable, which is another key element. The other reason is just the world we live in. There is so much change going on, and there are so many challenges outside in the environment affecting our businesses and organisations. And that mean that procurement itself clearly has a very central role to play in procurement capabilities in order for our organisations to be able to respond to those changes. So whether it's the economy or austerity, hopefully it's not going to get that bad in Europe, but we all know the challenges that are faced by the public sector in terms of the need to massively reduce costs. And then more widely, the European situation, which never seems to go away, and I'm sure there's a lot more impact for all of us in all our businesses that we need to be able to respond to. So there will always be change going on in the external environment. As I say, procurement has a key element to play in responding to that. And the final point on P2P, why bother? This is from an Ardent Partners research from last year, which is interesting in terms of looking at technology and IT generally. So I think quite often IT has a bad name in terms of putting a lot of cost into businesses, but not necessarily delivering a return on investment on that. And what this is saying is actually procurement technology is better than many other aspects of technology. So here they've said that procurement teams are successful in deploying solutions, driving user adoption, on average, produce more compelling returns than other functional teams, so HR, finance, etc., which is good to hear and is probably what I'd expect. Because certainly in our role, when we're talking to organisations, it's all about defining the return on investment and what the solution will deliver to organisations, not just today, but into the future as well. So I've got a question here, P2P or P2P. I'm not sure if anyone's got an answer to that one. But it leads into my next point, which is all around the first step, if you like, which is organisational structure. And so when we say P2P, it's obviously procure to pay. And in terms of a procure to pay project, the question is who actually drives that project? Is it the first P, procurement, or is it the second P, finance? Clearly, those have very different objectives to be achieved out of this type of project. Clearly, we believe it needs to be owned, managed, run from a procurement perspective to deliver the correct outcomes that are required rather than being delivered from the, usually it starts with the e-invoicing end, which is definitely the wrong way to start out on P2P. If you start with electronic invoicing, you haven't sorted out your data in the first place, it's coming out, you haven't got your control with your suppliers, you're just going to run into many more problems than you would otherwise. And it often happens that way, I think, because there's more visibility of the overhead, the challenges in accounts payable from a finance perspective than the actual purchasing bit, which is more spread out across the organisation. So who owns P2P? I've taken that initial circle and put it in a linear fashion there. And we're just taking a look at the different roles within a business or an organisation actually involved in that P2P process. So you see, starting out, you've got a business user who has the business need for their particular products. They raise a request, which is then approved. Now that may or may not be procurement involved in that. Certainly it's in a procurement process, but it might be budget holders or whomever, depends what your workflows are. Then it's onto the supplier who fulfills. The goods are delivered. You've got another business user who accepts those goods in and consumes them. The supplier submits an invoice. Finance deals with the payment elements of that. So it's interesting when you map it out like that, the whole process, that actually the bit that's procurement per se is actually quite small. And as I said before, I accept very much that the whole contract, life cycle management, etc., is as a separate issue, but purely in terms of its transactional process, it's those business users that are key to the success of a procure-to-pay process. So procurement clearly needs to engage with all those roles, both within and outside the business, in order to make sure that the process matches those particular business requirements. So first lesson is ensure the management structure reflects the needs and requirements of all user groups. Who owns data quality? So this is on to the second point now. Data is something that's very close to our hearts at Science Warehouse. It's what actually drives the whole P2P system. Without that, you've got no hope, really. I could probably speak all day about it, but I won't, I assure you, because I won't stand in the way of your lunch. But all I want to say is that high quality data is at the heart of, heart of successful procurement. And that's at so many levels. So it's from contract management. Clearly you need to have all the details and accurate capture of everything within that life cycle in order to effectively manage your contracts. Product sourcing, making sure you get the right products in the right place at the right time. Transaction management, which is the P2P piece. If you have the wrong data going onto your documentation, then you're going to get the wrong products. Your invoice isn't going to match all the rest of it. Supplier fulfillment, that relates to the last point. So the supplier needs to get accurate data from you in order to fulfill your requirement effectively and for it to match with their own systems. And the point that many people see is around the spend analysis piece, where data is very visible in terms of how many of us actually have to go externally or scrabble around in our systems to try and find decent data which we can actually understand our spend with. Data is absolutely key to those. So it's very much, it's the lifeblood of procure to pay. So if we look at data, and I'll put it content there, so data which is contextualized in some way, so it actually forms information, and where that impacts throughout the P2P process, clearly the search element, product sourcing and finding, the order element, as I've said, in terms of having an accurate order, going through your workflows, reaching the suppliers, invoicing clearly, so accurate invoice from your supplier, which then matches off against that purchase order on all the relevant criteria, part numbers, price, description, etc. And then the business intelligence, so procurement business intelligence, I've put as PBI in there. So that's affecting the user experience of your P2P process, the ability to control your spend. It affects the suppliers, their productivity, and the ability to give you good service. Accounts payable clearly on the invoice side, and then the spend visibility and contract management piece driving out of the business intelligence. So the second lesson is, I feel like I'm in a pulpit here actually, to rigorously control your catalogue data, make sure it is clean, consistent and categorized. Third point is all around usability. I don't know what springs to mind when people think about usability, but I think certainly from the vendor side, it's having a nice interface that looks good and does all the right things. That's certainly very important, but it's not just about, that's what we call user experience. Yes, that is key, but there's a lot more to usability. Some of it relates back to the data point I just made in terms of everything working smoothly and in a connected way. So there's systems integration, so that's both internally and externally with your suppliers. So as we saw on the Accenture study, it's those more mature organizations, the ones where they have the full connectivity and integration between their systems now. There are so many examples out there where that doesn't really exist. It might work nicely within your organization, but there are gaps in reaching the supplier, or there may not be the full integration with internal systems. But that's a key component of usability when you consider all of those user types, user groups that are involved in the process. Functionality, I've just downplayed that a little bit. Clearly, it's kind of the basis really. You kind of have to assume that the functionality is right for your situation. But clearly, I think I've seen it written somewhere that P2P systems are somewhat like cars these days, so they all do essentially the same job, or a good job, but then there are different types if you want one that goes fast or is fuel efficient or whatever it may be. So clearly you need your particular flavour, whether it's for your industry or for your particular geography, whatever it may be. And the fourth point I've got there is around the support process. So how does that work within your project? Is the supplier, the provider of the P2P system, incentivised, engaged to provide the right level of support to ensure that you have that ongoing element that's not just a case of giving you some software and leaving you to implement it. So the third lesson is ensure an end-to-end approach to the e-procurement experience. So that's covering all those user groups. The second point I've put in there is an interesting one in terms of sort of from a procurement point of view, viewing the P2P system as a vendor would their website. So ultimately, the users in your organisation that you're asking to use this system, it's a similar approach to a supplier. They don't just, obviously they have a nice looking website, but also all the connectivity that goes into the fulfillment and ensuring all those bases are covered. The fourth point is all around targets. So who owns targets within the organisation? This is absolutely key in terms of what the drivers are for getting all those users engaged throughout the organisational structure that we've already seen. I don't want to go into the ins and outs of what targets are. We all know what they are, but clearly they're sort of measurable and timed and all that good stuff. The key thing is that they are clearly defined. They need to be relevant as well. So at the highest level for your project as a whole. It may be around delivering certain levels of savings, certain levels of compliance within the organisation. That's good for the project, but then for each individual user group, what are they actually getting out of that? They need to be defined for them as well, so they understand. And that relates to the point around incentives too. Those need to be clearly defined, and incentives can be positive and negative ones. So, carrot or stick, or both potentially. And authority is the final point. So this is all around basically having the management authority within the organisation to drive the project forward. So if in some way it's hidden from board level, or I think Remco said this morning, it's important to get middle management buy-in as well. It's not just about the board, which is certainly very true. This thing needs to filter down, but it's also when you go to your suppliers, if they say, well, this is mandated from the board level, then they're clearly going to be much more likely to listen and engage, and the rest of the organisation will be engaged as well. Sorry, I clicked the wrong way there, didn't I? So lesson 4 is define, make sure there are clear deliverables for all stakeholders. I'll put including your P2P provider and board level visibility of targets. So the middle point there relates back to the one I mentioned before in terms of what is the provider actually doing to deliver the support and make sure that your system is actually implemented, and not just giving you a piece of software which is then left for you to implement or a third party to implement. The final point, so this will be the fifth one, the 5 steps. The question mark is, do you have a clear vision? The reason for asking that question is clearly today there is a requirement if you're going into the process of implementing a P2P solution, or you may be some way through it, but there is a need to continuously re-examine what that solution, what that system is doing for you, and whether it's right for the organisation. So again, going back to Remco's point earlier, I think that's it's around aligning what you're doing within your project with the strategic objectives of the organisation. So it may be about cost reduction. It may be in the public sector. It may be about delivering more with less. That kind of message. It may be in certain sectors about driving innovation. But clearly, as long as the project aligns with those objectives, then it's going to get the support and buy-in and relevance for the business as a whole. Is the business case future-proof? So that's, if you're starting out on a project, there will be a big hit of savings from implemented P2P. But when you get 2-3 years down the line, where are those benefits going to come from to enable you to keep investing in that solution and maintaining it and making it relevant for the organisation? So that's not probably the number one priority when you're setting out a project, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked at as you move forward. And clearly, as we've seen, companies, organisations are changing all the time, and is that whether that changes at management level, whether it's changing your systems, whether it's the external business environment, organisational change, all of these have potential to impact on the success of a project and need to be considered as part of your overall approach. And the final point is vendor collaboration and roadmap. So I think this is one which maybe isn't thought about to a great extent in a contracting process. I don't know how many processes I've been through where you get a huge list of specifications, and they're all technical specifications. Does it do this, that, and the other? Well, we've mentioned the point about functionality. Clearly, it does need to do those, but for me, a lot more is around all these other organisational factors, and in terms of the vendor, what is their strategy? Where are they going? Does their culture fit your culture? Does it? In what way can you collaborate with them to feed in your requirements and ensure that what is being or planning to be delivered? So we as an organisation, we've got a 5-year roadmap. So we're looking at what we're going to be delivering in 5 years' time. And clearly there are steps along the way with that, but for us it's key that there is an engagement with our customers and obviously the wider market to ensure that that's relevant from our point of view, but from the point of view of customers, it's key to ensure that the provision remains relevant for the future as well. So the fifth lesson is to build capability that matches the strategic vision of your organization. I've just got a very quick list of some of the benefits that our customers have reported. What I was going to do was try and match those off against each of the 5 that have. I couldn't quite do it because it's not quite as linear or straight. There are obviously a combination of elements which result in any particular benefit driving out. But you could say, comparability cash savings of 10% plus. That is very much down to data with our solution, having the right data there to enable comparison between different suppliers, whole streamlining of your P2P process, invoice matching. As I say, you need the connectivity for that to happen between your systems and your supplier systems. And you also have to have the right data in the documentation for that to actually happen. The reduction in order processing costs, reduction in on-site stock holding. So this is more moving towards the SRM element, I suppose, where having that greater engagement with suppliers, which comes through implementing a P2P type solution, actually enables more just-in-time type activity. And then the usability point, this is, with our solution, we do tend to get very high levels of compliance, and that really reflects on the overall usability of the system. So in summary, I think the key take-home message I'd like to portray today is that success is very much based on people and organisation, not necessarily product features. And those 5 features that I've outlined for stepping up to the top of the P2P podium, obviously appropriate management structure, high quality data, high quality catalogue data, and holistic approach to usability, so it's not just about product interface and functionality. Board visibility of deliverables and making sure those are clearly defined, and to have a solution which is built around long-term value creation and the vision of the business. And that was my 5 points, so hopefully they actually make sense with people. As I say, if you've got any questions, if anyone has any questions now, I would like to ask. Yeah?
You mentioned at the outset that you think focusing on invoicing is the wrong place to start in any P2P project. Could you elaborate on why you think that's the case?
Primarily because if you look at your P2P process, then the documentation that is actually driving your correct invoicing is driven out of your purchase order. So if you start with the invoice process, clearly you've got to ensure that invoice data is going to be accurate in the first place. So unless you have a mechanism for ensuring that, then you're going to run into problems. So and certainly we work with a lot of vendors, so suppliers, I should say, and that is very much the approach they prefer to take. If I could relate the number of times that a supplier, vendors come to me and say, well, this organisation wants to invoice and they haven't even got their purchase order process sorted yet. It just creates huge headaches for them. Is your experience different from that then?
No, I was just curious as to
Yeah.
the rationale.
And we've got data from our own researchers that you actually, by implementing even without implementing the e-invoicing step, you eliminate 80% of invoice errors and the cost of P2P just by having the purchase order process accurate. So that it's just the logical place to start.
You were coming back to 90% first time match there from percentages. Was that based from your own internal P2P front end system to invoices coming in, physical invoices?
Yes, so that's looking at data. It's looking at data within the Science Warehouse platform, and look at first-time invoice matching. So it's actually just over 90%, in fact.
So is the invoice coming back in? Are you talking physical paper or
No, sorry, this is electronic invoice matching. So within our platform, we do what we call a pre-match of the incoming e-invoice with the electronic purchase order. And then if it matches, then that is fired through to the customer's accounts payable system. In fact, from the customer's point of view, they don't see any erroneous invoices at all because they're actually bounced out of our system for the supplier to correct. So from the customer's point of view, they get 100% invoice matching. The documents are sent. It can be. Yeah, it depends on the supplier. It can be electronic, so like CXML or whatever. For smaller companies, it may be PO flip, but they create an electronic invoice, which comes as an electronic document into the customer's system.
And the 10% is usually like receipting on the buyer side?
No, it doesn't include receipting, so it will be non-matched to the tolerances set. So most of our customers set them pretty high, so like 0% on price or something like that. So obviously there's depends how the organisation wants to set it up, but basically it's because the data doesn't match for whatever reason. Yes. Yes.
If you have two different systems, it doesn't work, especially when you want to do the matching. So when you talk about system integration, can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about obviously every provider, but from the way the Science Warehouse platform works, it will work with different providers. So we have some customers that are using platforms like OB10 for their invoicing, and they're using the Science Warehouse for the sort of outbound purchase to order process. So and we, our platform integrates with many different systems on the finance side, all the supplier side. So yeah, happy to talk to you about that. It shouldn't really be an issue. I'm not saying that there may be some systems where it's not possible, but in general, it's not an issue. Hello.
Just to be clear, did you say your system doesn't handle GRN and SRN? You're just matching a PO to an invoice?
No, it does. It can. It depends on the model. I mean, a lot of customers will do that within their own ERP environment, but we can do it within our system as well. So you can do a three-way match.
But your matching statistics were based on a two-way?
That was on a two-way match, yes. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.